Space launch trajectory and countdown net. Pad is clear.
10, 9, 8,
Launch auto sequence
7,
has started.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Go for launch.
Vehicle is supersonic.
Stage separation confirmed. Dragon, separation confirmed. Stage 1 is transonic. Landing legs have deployed. And Falcon 9 has landed.
Hello and welcome to our webcast coverage of the O3b mPower mission for our customer SES. Today's launch marks SpaceX's 190th overall Falcon 9 launch and our 58th launch of 2022. My name is Shiva and I'm a space operations engineer here at SpaceX. I'm joining you today from our headquarters in Hawthorne, California. And on your screen is a live view of our Falcon 9 awaiting its 5:48 p.m. Eastern Time launch from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. Today we're flying the first of 5 second-generation O3b mPower launches, which will deliver low-latency connectivity services to mobility, telecom, government, and enterprise customers around the globe, with service scheduled to begin in the third quarter of next year. The O3b mPower satellites were designed in collaboration with SES and Boeing and will operate from the medium Earth orbit, or MEO, and that's about 8,000 kilometers away from the Earth's surface. The second-generation satellites will be joining SES's O3b mPower initial constellation of 11 high-throughput and low-latency satellites, as well as their extensive ground infrastructure. Let's learn a little bit more about SES and their mission.
It's the moment we've all been waiting for. A new era of connectivity is here. With performance above all at its core, SES's second-generation medium Earth orbit system, O3b mPower, offers terabit-level scale, the highest, most flexible throughput, low latency, and guaranteed reliability, making it the satellite system of choice when performance matters most. Whether it's governments looking to enable critical missions, mobile network operators deploying networks including 5G, energy companies digitalizing their operations, or world-class cruise operators offering high-speed broadband access to passengers at sea, O3b mPower ensures seamless operations and premium user experience wherever they are.
So we started this journey back in 2017 as we were trying to figure out how we could bring all of the really good stuff, all the lessons learned from the original O3b constellation, but scale it ridiculously. And so here we sit on the threshold of launching this brand new constellation. There are 3 things that really differentiate O3b mPower by virtue of where we're flying the satellites from in medium Earth orbit. And the differentiators are it's carrier-grade capability, it's wherever our customers need it, and we're completely flexible in the way that we could deliver that bandwidth. And those 3 things combined make O3b mPower completely unique.
The first 2 satellites of our initial 11 will soon be launching into medium Earth orbit. They will join SES's current O3b system at 8,000 kilometers above the Earth's surface, building on SES's pioneering legacy of empowering businesses, governments, and communities in some of the most difficult to reach places on Earth. With O3b mPower, we're taking that experience even further.
O3b mPower is scaled ridiculously from the original O3b constellation, and that means that in all our verticals, in cruise, in government, in fixed data, we're able to serve not just 10 beams per satellite, but 5,000 beams per satellite. So the number of applications that we can support on O3b mPower has just grown hugely, and all with the ambition of making sure that we're supporting all of our customers' networks and all of their needs.
O3b mPower's secret lies in the unique combination of the most innovative satellites, industry-leading ground infrastructure, and advanced software systems, all developed to form a future-proof network, ready to bring an extraordinary level of performance to satellite-enabled communications.
Our journey with O3b mPower with SES began when we were presented with a very complex problem that we knew a traditional design approach, a traditional satellite architecture simply wouldn't solve. We needed to design a network in the sky. It's been a tremendous journey of invention.
We're here in historic Cape Canaveral, and we're just a short time away now from the first launch of O3b mPower. And actually, this is going to be the first of 5 launches that are going to happen over the next year or so, and I could not be more excited. And I hope in joining this broadcast, you're going to get to witness an incredible launch, but you're also going to get to share in the O3b mPower journey.
We are just over 7 minutes away from liftoff, so we're going to take a closer look at the vehicle that you see on your screen. The 2-stage Falcon 9 vehicle stands 229 feet tall. That's slightly taller than a 21-story building. That bottom 2/3 of the vehicle is called the first stage, and sometimes known as the booster. Its job is to accelerate the vehicle through the Earth's atmosphere and into space, and then it will separate away from the rest of the rocket. Now, today's booster is flying for its 8th time, previously having supported cargo resupply missions 22 and 25, crewed missions 3 and 4, the Turksat 5B mission, Eutelsat Hotbird 13G, and 1 Starlink mission. Now, above the first stage, we have our second stage. It has a single Merlin vacuum or MVAC engine, and that ignites shortly after the stages separate. The second stage is what will ultimately carry the O3b mPower satellites to space.
Stage 1, RP1 load complete.
The satellites are safely enclosed inside the 17-foot diameter payload fairing, which is that large barrel structure at the top of the vehicle, the nose cone, right above the second stage. It's made of a carbon composite material, and it protects the satellites on their way to orbit. We'll jettison those fairing halves approximately 3 minutes and 20 seconds into the flight. Now, for today's mission, we've got 2 spacecraft on board on the second stage inside that fairing. Each payload will deploy at separate times, about 6 minutes apart from each other. There's a great view of the 2 mPower satellites on your screen. The fairing halves supporting today's mission are flight proven, one half having flown for its 4th time and the other having flying for its 5th time today. Now, next to the vehicle, we've got this large truss structure that's called the transporter erector. You will also hear that referred to as the TE or the strongback. We use that to roll the vehicle out to the launch pad and raise it into the vertical launch position. It also has the important role of routing the vehicle's fluids, power, telemetry, and umbilicals from the ground system to the rocket and the satellites. And that'll continue until Falcon 9 transitions into the final stages of the countdown when it transitions to internal power and ultimately clears the pad. At T-0, liftoff, we'll retract the TE away in order to clear the way for Falcon 9's
Tanks
ascent.
are pressing for strongback, retract.
You just heard a call out there that we're beginning to pressurize the tanks on Falcon 9 in preparation for retracting the strongback. Keep an eye just below the fairing. You'll see the clamp arms of the TE. We'll start to open those around T-4 minutes and 17 seconds. Beautiful day for an almost night launch. A great view there of the second stage, and above it is the first stage. We should shortly see the strongback arms retracting. There you can see them opening. Now, as we get closer to T-0, we'll actually see the strongback fully recline away in preparation for that in just after T-4 minutes. We'll see the strongback begin a short recline away from the vehicle. At the base of the strongback, we've got a hinge structure, and we use ground hydraulic systems to pull back the strongback to a fully reclined position that'll recline even further at the T-0 mark. Next major milestone coming up at about the T-3 minute mark. That'll be liquid oxygen loading complete on the first stage. At this point, we have fully loaded fuel on both the first and second stages, and we're topping up liquid oxygen on both stages. We have about 1 million pounds of kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen at launch. And we continue
Stage 1, lock load
topping
complete.
up. There was a call out there for stage 1 lock load complete. We continue topping up that liquid oxygen on the first and second stage because we loaded at an extremely cold temperature, which is much colder than the surrounding environment, and it tends to boil off. So as it boils off, we vent off some of those gases that produces those white clouds you see around the vehicle, and we keep topping it up so we can get the maximum amount of propellant and therefore performance out of the vehicle for the mission. So next major milestone, liquid oxygen loading complete on the second stage. You can actually see how cold the tank skin is on the second stage with those white clouds forming around it. Again, that white cloud's actually the moist Florida air condensing around and forming water vapor clouds around the stage. Beautiful view at the Cape. You are tracking no major weather constraints today.
Stage 2, lock load complete.
Call out there that LOX loading complete on the first and second stages. And that white gas cloud you're seeing is actually us venting the lines of the transporter erector, clearing out any propellant that is in the lines that is being routed to the
Gas
vehicle.
launch closeouts.
Next major milestone coming up at T-minus 60 seconds. That'll be when Falcon 9 transitions into startup. That means that its internal flight computers will have taken over the launch countdown. And they'll continue to have control of the vehicle through the rest of the mission. At T-minus 2 seconds, we'll light those Merlin 1D engines in preparation for liftoff.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
So with that, the O3b mPower satellites continue to look healthy. Range and the vehicles are go for today's launch. Weather's looking great. Last major milestone here is the launch director's final go for launch.
LD, go for launch.
And with that, we're ready to launch in just about 40 seconds. So with that, let's watch as Falcon 9 takes the O3b mPower satellites to orbit.
T-minus 30 seconds. 15 seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engines full power. And liftoff of SES mPower. Go Falcon 9, go SES.
Vehicle switching downrange.
M1D chamber pressure nominal.
Power and telemetry nominal.
Falcon 9 has successfully lifted off from Space Launch Complex 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida, carrying the O3b mPower satellites to orbit. Here's a great view from the first stage, looking down at those Merlin 1D engines. Now, during the ascent, we have begun tilting the engines. That's called gimbaling. And we've begun actually moving horizontally away from the launch pad in a maneuver called a gravity turn. We're still mostly going up. As you can see, the altitude is increasing. But we're also starting to go horizontally away from the pad, and ultimately it's that horizontal speed that will get us to orbit. I apologize, I just talked over the call out there for max Q. That is the point of maximum aerodynamic pressure and the highest stresses on the vehicle during the ascent. Now, the rocket needs to go about 17,500 miles per hour horizontally in order to avoid getting pulled back to Earth. So we'll be continuing to accelerate the vehicle in preparation for several events we've got coming up in about a minute. The first of those will be main engine cutoff. followed by stage separation, and then second engine start number 1. Now, main engine cutoff is where we shut down all 9 of these Merlin 1D engines in preparation for separation of the 2 stages, and then followed shortly after by second engine start number 1. We heard a call out there for MVAC chill in. That means we've begun to chill in the turbo pumps on the second stage in preparation for full flow of the Merlin vacuum engine and ignition at about the T+244 mark. So again, coming up, main engine cutoff, followed by stage separation, and then SES1.
Nico.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC ignition.
Great views. Left-hand side of your screen is looking up through the inner stage where the Merlin vacuum is sitting. You can see that's now a first stage view of the grid fins deploying. Right-hand side of your screen is that Merlin vacuum engine having started its burn. It'll continue burning for about the next 5 minutes. Next major milestone will be deployment of the fairing halves. Now that we're high enough in the atmosphere, we can actually jettison that mass and recover the fairing halves for use on a future mission.
Bearing separation confirmed.
Great shot. On the right-hand side of your screen is the top of the payload adapter. And on the, sometimes we can catch the fairing halves jettisoning away in this view on the Merlin vacuum. Now again, we'll be attempting to retrieve these fairing halves once they fall back to planet Earth on a recovery vessel named Bob. If you're just joining us, welcome.
Acquisition of signal, Bermuda.
About T+4 minutes into today's mission, had an on-time liftoff from Space Launch Complex 40 in Florida. On the left-hand side of your screen is Falcon 9's first stage, using some attitude gas to reorient itself for its next major event, which is the entry burn. And on the right-hand side of your screen, we've got a great view of the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage. About a little more than a minute into its first burn, and it is carrying the mPower, O3b mPower satellites to orbit. We're carrying 2 today on today's mission for our customer SES. Next major event is going to happen on the first stage, which is on the left-hand side of your screen. That'll be the entry burn. During the entry burn, we relight 3 of the Merlin 1D engines on the first stage. The center engine, followed shortly after by 2 of the radial engines. And we do that to slow down the vehicle. And that helps us reduce the re-entry forces and heating, and ultimately allows us to recover and reuse that first stage. So right now, the first stage is periodically doing some bursts of its attitude control gas. We're trying to get the engines pointed back towards the Earth, so we can slow ourselves down once we get to the entry burn time, that in about a minute from now. Now this view is of our Merlin vacuum engine. We've got cameras on either side of the engine. You can see the glow of the nozzle from those hot exhaust gases, transferring heat into the engine, and that heat is radiating away to the cool background of space. Now during re-entry on the first stage, we actually put that nice layer of soot on the first stage. That soot actually comes from flying through the rocket's exhaust gases. You can see that we're still going extremely fast, about 8,000 kilometers per hour on the first stage. That'll slow down as we do the entry burn, but the rocket's plume, which is carbon-based, ends up coming back onto the surface of the rocket and leaves that nice layer of soot that you see on our flight-proven boosters. Entry burn scheduled to start here in about 10 seconds. Keep an eye out for that on the left-hand side of your screen.
Stage 1 FTS is safe.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
Successful entry burn startup. This burn lasting just about a little over 20 seconds. You can see that our speed is rapidly decreasing.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
And shutdown of those 3 Merlin 1D engines is the key to lowering the cost of spaceflight, and that enables more investments in critical scientific research and missions like today's Payload. Falcon 9, the Falcon 9 first stage, that's 3 and 4. TWRCSat 5B, Eutelsat Hopper 13, and a Starlink mission, and of course today's mPower mission. Next major event is actually shutdown of the Merlin vacuum engine
Stage 2
that we
FTS
see
is safe.
on our screen. Now the Merlin engines are optimized for thrust in
MVAC shutdown.
They're optimized for thrust in the vacuum of space. They actually have an extremely long nozzle compared to the Merlin 1Ds. We had our call out there for shutdown on the
Nominal orbit insertion.
on the Merlin vacuum engine, as well as a call out of nominal orbit insertion. Now it sounds like we're having a little bit of telemetry issues with the first stage. Should have started its landing burn at about the T plus 8 minute 24 second mark.
Expected loss of signal, Cape.
So the landing burn sequence, we start a single Merlin engine on the first stage. And by now, hopefully we would have landed on our drone ship. We'll see if we can get some more information from the launch team once we get telemetry back. So at this point, the mission is not over yet. We've just completed the first of 3 burns on this Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage. We're in our first parking orbit. Our next burn coming up on the second stage will be coming up after this coast phase. We'll ignite for a second time for a short burn, and then a third burn after that, a little bit longer after. So we'll see you back here in about the T plus 27 minute mark for second engine start number 2. See you back in about 17 minutes. In the meantime, enjoy the space tunes.
Expected loss of signal, Bermuda.